Here's another spicy story from 1938 entitled Blonde Trouble by Cliff Carruth. Somebody had been snooping around his room at the Palmetto Baths. Val Norton saw that as soon as he went in. Tall, bronzed from the winter Florida sun, the words "Lifeguard" lettered in white across the front of his bathing shirt. Val stood surveying the place. Nothing there to interest any crook. His framed diploma on the wall, his only suit of clothes in the closet, his battered valise under the bed. Val couldn't imagine who would take the trouble to sneak into his quarters. He saw something in the corner and picked it up. It was a crumpled handkerchief, very tiny, very feminine, and much scented. Val sniffed the exotic perfume before he narrowed his eyes and tucked it safely away. Then, with a shrug, he peeled off the suit he had worn all day on the beach and climbed into the clothes hanging in the closet. It was nearly 7 o'clock then. The baths were deserted. The beach stretched empty and desolate beyond the dunes. Val knew at this hour cocktails were in vogue at the fashionable hotels at Point Sable, and that orchestras were playing and evening gowns glittering in the soft afterglow. He smiled thinly as he made his way toward the parking space and the roadster that had cost him $35 cash a fortnight previous. His dinner would be consumed at the Gravy Boat, that busy cafeteria in town. His music would be the clatter of crockery and the swish of soup going up and down. As Val reached his drab and dusty car, he stopped. Curled comfortably up in the front seat was a blonde girl. She was young, about 18 or so, and she had the face of an angel. Her eyes were a deep topaz, her lips like ripe cherries, her figure gorgeous, as Val had reason to know. She smiled languorously at him. Her parted lips revealed a glimmering line of pearl. Val frowned, annoyed. He knew her. She was Sue Chappell, daughter of the wealthy Chappells who inhabited the big tiled-roof villa on the lagoon. For the 2 weeks of his job at the baths, this girl had bothered him. She wouldn't let him alone. She had pursued him in a fashion strange and mysterious. She had tried in every possible way to arouse his interest in her. Continued failure, evidently, had not discouraged her in the slightest.
"Burning up?"
she inquired coolly. "What's the idea?" Val asked.
"Nothing much. I'm going to dinner with you."
"Oh, yeah? Try another shot. You're going to dinner, but not with me, baby." Her reply was to relax comfortably against the tattered leather upholstery and continue to smile dreamily at him. She wore a cute little white silk dress. It was practically backless, and Val decided she didn't have any too much on underneath it. Her rounded bosom made a mockery of a brassiere as a covering or shield. Her hips were smoothly curved under the clinging silk, and her full cherry lips were sensuous in their carmine smile. Val had seen her every day in the brief bathing suit she wore for her sunbaths. How she got away, unashamed with it, was a question. Up north, he knew, a suit like Sue's on any respectable beach would immediately lodge its wearer in jail. "Come on, climb out," he said curtly. "I'm in a hurry."
"I'm not,"
she replied drowsily.
"I've got all day and night."
Val drew his brows together. His handsome face darkened. He'd had about enough of Sue Chappell, sufficient blonde trouble to last a long while. With an effort, he kept his temper in check. "What are you trying to do? See how much I'll take?" he asked roughly. "Why don't you leave me alone? I've shown you plainly I'm not interested in you. You're not my type, and I'm not yours. Scram like a good kid."
In 2 days,
she said placidly.
It'll be the 26th of the month.
So what?
So you've got to be interested in me,
she told him. Nuts. I don't want to be rude, but I think you're a little touched.
Simply got to,
she repeated slowly.
I made up my mind to that when I first saw you. You're just the kind of man I like best. You're big, strong, and oh, so masculine. And I know you're not married or engaged or even burned up about another girl. So you see, that makes it 100% as far as I'm concerned.
As usual, she was speaking in riddles. Val lost his patience. Opening the roadster's right door, he reached in and hauled her off the seat. She struggled, but to no avail. When he got her out, Val secretly thrilled to the soft warmth of her in his arms. When he looked down, he saw the deep cleft under the bra in her creamy, delicately tanned skin. To save his life, he couldn't help but feel a funny tingle surge through him. Hastily, he set her upright on small, shapely feet that were supported by a pair of delightfully curved legs, unstockinged and as brown as the legs of a beachcomber. Val kicked the starter and backed swiftly out. Sue Chapel stood where he had put her, her odd eyes focused on him speculatively. A stain of pink tinted each smooth cheek.
I'm not, though,
she called after him as he grinned at her and waved a hand. You'll see. After his cafeteria meal, Val wandered around town. The recollection of Sue in his arms stirred him queerly. He couldn't put it away from him. How soft she had been, how delectably warm. What had she meant by mentioning the 26th of the month? Was she a trifle balmy? What? The round white moon was up when Val finally drove back to the baths, put the car up, and walked down the planked promenade toward the building where he had his room. He had taken no more than a few long strides before he came to a quick halt, his gaze on the moonlit beach. There, where the frothy combers broke, a slim, familiar figure stood, arms outstretched. She wore the same scanty suit he had mentally condemned as indecent. The glow of the moon turned her young body to silver and her hair to platinum. Val suppressed an exclamation. Rigidly he watched while she ran into the swirling surf, dove through a breaking wave, and started to swim. Val's lean face hardened. The damn little fool. She wasn't any too hot as a swimmer. What was the idea of her trying it out when there was no one around to render first aid if she had gotten into a jam? Further and further, Val's frown turned to a worried expression. Where was she headed? For Scotland? He vaulted the rail lightly and ran down to the surf line.
Hey, come back! You're out too far!
His bellow must have reached her. She saluted him with a high-flung arm before she buried her face in the sea again. Val didn't hesitate. Off went his trousers, coat, and shirt. He knew the treachery of the tide when it was on the turn. She might want to commit suicide, but he wasn't going to let her spoil his clean record for him. Powerful strokes carried him to her in the wave-tossed trough of the ocean. He ranged alongside her and grabbed her arm.
Leave me alone,
she panted. You're coming in, now.
That's what you think.
She tried to pull her arm free. Val wasn't in any mood for an argument. He employed the same tactics he used in emergency cases when a swimmer was drowning. A clout on the chin took all the fight from her. Val caught her as she let go. He got an arm around her slender waist and headed back to the shore. She had undressed in the space between the locker rooms and the dryer. Her clothes were in a little pile there, the slinky brassiere impudently on top. Val gave her a final shake and pushed her against the brick wall. I'm going to complain to the authorities about you. You're the worst pain in the neck I've ever known. You're a menace. Get dressed and get out of here. A seductive smile, slow and amorous, curved her petal-red lips. She ran a hand down over the sweeping line of her plain, flat torso and swelling hips. Val breathed harder. The scanty one-piece suit had become disarranged from his long haul back through the pounding surf. The narrow straps, holding it bracelet fashion about her neck, had slipped. Her breasts were more revealed than concealed, gelatinous mounds with a sensuously provocative movement when she stirred. The water had made the rest of what little material there was clinging tightly to her. In the molten flood of the sailing moon, she appeared nearly unclad, and Val's pulses beat faster as he realized that.
Well, you had to come out and get me anyway,
she said cheerfully.
You must like me. Some. You wouldn't let me drown.
I was thinking of my job, Val said crisply. It's my business to keep people from drowning. I'm a lifesaver, in case you've forgotten.
And the flavor doesn't matter,
she wisecracked.
You're sweet and ever so cute in your shorts.
For the first time, Val remembered his own abbreviated costume. With a smothered exclamation, he wheeled and beat it down to where he had left his other clothing. When he returned, Sue was struggling into the white silk dress. It was halfway over her yellow head, and Val had an unobstructed view of her flimsy step-ins, the round garters holding her stockings aloft, and the silky bras that in no way protected the charming double burden filling her cups to overflowing.
Help me, can't you?
She said in a muffled tone. Val yanked the dress into place and handed her her white handbag. Good night, and out.
Hard-boiled, aren't you?
She observed.
Tough guy.
Her voice sank a wheedly note creeping into it.
Why can't you act regular, like any other man?
Yeah, I know. Any other man would have had you in his arms days ago. But I'm not any other man. I'm me, and you're a headache.
Just what don't you like about me?
She inquired.
Everything. I think you're crazy. You're rich, and I'm a poor lug trying to get by. You want amusement, somebody to romance with. Well, you've picked the wrong party, baby. I'm a serious somebody, and I don't waste time fooling around with Janes who want a good time, and then when they get it, drop me like a hot cake.
Oh,
she cried softly.
So you want matrimony, the fireside, slippers and stuff? You expect...
Beat it, Val requested curtly. I've got to lock up for the night.
He turned on his heel and left her without further comment. Val did his routine duty. After he checked on the various doors to make certain they were locked, he went back and found Sue had gone. Only a damp puddle was a souvenir of where she had stood. Val sat down and smoked a thoughtful cigarette. A dreamy sense of tropical languor possessed him. Against his better judgment and logic, he felt intrigued. Perhaps he was an idiot for passing up Sioux Chapel. He could not seem to figure things out. He was confused and upset. It was close to midnight when Val sought his room. In darkness, he opened the door, went in, and shut and locked it after him. He took a forward step across the matting and stopped as quickly as if he'd been shot. Curled up in his bed, the sheets drawn to her chin, her blonde hair awry on the pillow, Sioux Chapel reclined. She made no pretense of sleeping. Her long-lashed eyes looked at him silently as Val switched on the tiny light beside the bed.
Now I'm mad,
he said through set teeth.
This is the last straw.
Grimly, he turned to the washstand across the room. There was bowl and pitcher there. The latter vessel was filled with half a gallon of cold water. Val reached for it. Watching him, Sue suddenly flung the sheet aside and sat bolt upright. In lieu of a nightie, she wore the brassiere and panties. She registered alarm when he walked back, carrying the pitcher.
Hey, what are you gonna do? You can't do...
Val aimed and fired. The half-gallon shot accurately from the pitcher's wide-lipped mouth and doused Sue. She gave vent to a startled, strangled cry and sputtered, looking down like a drowned mouse. Rubbing her eyes indignantly, she did the exact opposite of what Val intended for her. Sue sat down on the wet bed, pushing her damp yellow hair aside from her moist face.
Just for that,
she grated,
I'll never go.
Oh, yes, you will. And now.
He caught her in his arms. His strength was too much for her puny efforts to resist. Val picked her up. It was a new experience for him, and not one without emotional effects. For a minute she fought desperately. The brassiere went askew. Her wet hair hung limply. Val tried to force her to the door. She wound her legs around his to prevent it, and her arms tightened around his neck.
Val, Val!
The pleading in her low cry made him stand still. He looked at her, breathing hard. Her quivering lips were only inches from his own. Her breath fanned his hot face, and the twin hills of her breasts jammed themselves hard against his chest.
What is it?
Suddenly, she began to cry. 2 trembling tears, large as jewels, appeared on the long lashes, hesitated, and then rolled down her satiny cheeks. That was too much for Val. He could stand abuse, being bothered and annoyed and wisecracks, but tears were his undoing.
Sue.
Oh, Val, dear. You're so mean, and I love you so much.
Something happened to Val. Within he felt a snap, then a pounding rush of blood in his veins and a clamorous excitement that filled him with a strange, savage tenderness. Hardly aware of what he did, he brought his mouth close to hers. Their lips met and clung, and Val, dizzy and weak, heard what he was telling her.
I guess I've loved you ever since you first started to bother me, but what's the use, darling? You're...
Her red lips parted, and her bosom rose and fell, making the brassiere slip further. Her eyes, too, changed. The pupils dilated, and the eyes glowed with a soft, wonderful light.
I know who you are,
she whispered.
I sneaked in here this afternoon. I saw your law school diploma on the wall, and then some letters in your bureau. I know you're only saving lives here during vacation until...
Val fondled her fervently.
What else do you know?
That you've got to marry me before the 26th of the month. If you don't, I'll lose a trust fund I'm to inherit. That's why I've been chasing you, trying to get this minute to happen. And...
Well, it's happening,
he said happily, drawing her closer and closer still to his throbbing